There's this massive headwind for a company to get into this space right now.
Are we gonna mandate that every fixed wing aircraft and helicopter now gets some sort of drone avoidance?
This is the meat of the issue for what we're talking about here, because detect and avoid is the hardest and the not really solved.
You hear a buzzing sigh from outside your door. You go to your door and you open it up. At your front stoop is a box. You open up that box, and what is it? It's another episode of the Coastal Drone Podcast. Good morning. My name is Finn, and I'm here with Ian, and Cam is at the board. On today's episode of the Coastal Drone Podcast, we are talking about drone delivery. What's up? What's down? With drone delivery.
Left and right.
Left and right with drone delivery.
The ups and downs of drone delivery.
Look, I got through that intro. I got through that very goofy intro.
I just want to say that I was promised pizzas delivered by drones by 2021, and here we are in 2024. And not that I need pizza, but where's my pizza? So let's talk about it.
So drone delivery is basically available all over the world, with the possible exception of one major country that we may or may not be sitting in right now.
Well, all over the world except for if the world has drone laws.
The world has drone. Well, as we'll talk about, some places that do have drone laws, drone delivery is available. So there are a number of companies currently offering drone delivery all over the world. Zipline are probably the one that comes forefront to the mind. They're operating in the United States and Japan.
And Africa. Yeah.
Google Wing, probably in just sheer number of deliveries done. Google Wing is probably the big one. Wingcopter, they're out of Germany, doing drone delivery in Germany. And then major retailers, Amazon, DHL, and UPS all have some sort of drone delivery capability.
And Walmart.
And in Canada, we have Drone Delivery Canada, which is a company that is that we'll talk about a little bit later. So,
and then there's also like Indrotech and Volatus is getting into that because they're partnering as well. So
yeah, they're more in the creating hardware and testing stage as opposed to because in other parts of the world you can get a zipline drone. Zipline drones are cool. They basically get launched, like thrown, and then they're fixed. Then the wings pop out. They're a fixed wing drone, and then this was from during the height of COVID, and they were using these to drop in that box is COVID tests, and they would drop them into neighborhoods during COVID, so people could get COVID tests without having to go outside.
Mark Grober's got a really great video about the blood delivery in Africa as well.
Yeah,
so
that one was in Scotland. That photo in the last one.
Oh, okay.
Then we have German Wingcopter. I just included this because I think that the aircraft look really cool. I've always liked the Wingcopters. They, with both the propellers and the fixed wings, it's basically like an Osprey, but it's an Osprey that's not going to kill all of its passengers because it's not an Osprey.
If you're payload, you're also lunch.
Yes. But it's got vertical takeoff and landing capability with the propellers, and the fixed wing will make it more efficient in forward flight.
Yeah, it looks like they're articulating propeller heads as well, so they'll translate forward during flight.
And then DHL, of course, you can get. This is just a standard quadcopter that you could just literally. I think they're just strapping packages to the bottom of just a normal looking quadcopter. And then, of course, this year we've got the DJI Flycart 30 as a delivery-capable aircraft. So this is a video that was published earlier this year. It got a lot of
the delivery to the
it got a lot of play online. We won't watch the whole thing because it's a little bit
long.
5 minutes long.
Yeah,
but let's see if I can scrub through here. So they've got the Flycart 30, and they're going to deliver some. I can't remember what they're delivering, some sort of equipment.
Well, the gist of it is they're delivering supplies up, so oxygen bottles, food, emergency supplies, first aid, anything that needs to be brought up quickly. And then the other thing they're doing is they're bringing garbage down because it wasn't efficient and it wasn't safe for Sherpas to bring the garbage down all the time. So it's becoming a bit of a trash heap up on the top of the mountain.
Yeah, there's a number of, everyone's probably seen the John Oliver thing about Everest. There's a number of issues with Everest tourism.
It's basically like Capilano Suspension Bridge at this point.
Yes.
No,
So
it's not. Not to trivialize a 20,000 foot climb.
Yes.
But
The impressive thing about this is you just mentioned how high the mountain is. The density altitude for this would have been extremely high, and the fact that the fly cart was able to make it with a payload up the mountain and down the mountain on a battery is actually quite impressive in the cold as well. And the cold will decrease your flight time because
there's a lot of factors against it, especially density altitude. So the air is super thin, obviously at high elevation, which means the props have to spin faster, or the props have to they have to be engineered completely differently than something that's flying along at sea level. A good example of this is the Mars copter, right? So the robot drone that flies on Mars, the prop RPM is insanely high, and the prop pitch is totally different than what it would be on Earth. So they have to, when they test fly it on Earth, not in Canada, it had to be done in a vacuum chamber. Basically, they have to lower the air pressure so that it would match the conditions of Mars. So
that's some of the cool things about drone delivery. And then I saw this the other day, and I just thought it was funny.
It's a sound that has residents in College Station, Texas, talking. What do these drones sound like?
Well, it's like a chainsaw.
They sound like a swarm of bees, or 100 swarms of bees. That noise from an Amazon delivery drone. This community, one of the nation's first to use the company's technology.
They are loud.
Yeah.
They're not unloud. But
unloud.
They are not unloud. But they look cool. I like the way the Amazon drones look. I think they look kind of cool.
It's a flying hexagon.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. So that's kind of the state of the industry.
Yeah. And so on the noise side, like there's been innovation. Wing has, is it Wing? Or no, sorry, Zipline has their prototype drones. It's in the same Mark Rober video where they talk about the asymmetrical propeller design, where it's basically got a balance on one side and then just a single foil on the other side, and the noise profile of it. It's staggering what the difference is in terms of
and fixed wing will be less loud than a quadcopter because you need fewer engines, and also the engine isn't the thing creating lift, so it doesn't have to work as hard.
Yeah, it's not spinning at 10,000 RPM or something like that. So
exactly. So love them or hate them, as we see some people are not a fan of the delivery drones. What's up in Canada?
I'm still waiting for my pizza.
Still waiting for his pizza. So in drone delivery in Canada as a concept, we're kind of still in the figuring it out section.
Yeah.
Drone delivery is not yet widespread in Canada. You can't get it everywhere in Canada. You can get it in a couple of areas in Canada. And just to kind of we're not trying to bash a company here, but in Canada the largest drone delivery company is Drone Delivery Canada. And just to kind of contrast where the state of the industry where we're at in Canada versus the rest of the world, we found two different reports of what had happened. Walmart in the States in the last 2 years they did 20,000 deliveries, and Drone Delivery Canada in a similar time frame over 300,000 kilometers of test flights.
Wow. So that is that just test flights, or is that also commercial deliveries?
I think it was mostly test flights.
Okay.
But it could also include commercial deliveries. You were the one that told me that. So.
Well, it's flights.
Right.
I think it would include both commercial operations, because they do have commercial operations in place.
Yes, we're gonna look at them in a second.
Yeah.
But just in terms of what the companies are reporting is that some in the States they're reporting deliveries, and in Canada we're reporting kilometers flown.
3,600 kilometers, not 300,000 kilometers. That was in the first 6 months of 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to update the slide when we do the graphics. Do you want me to take it again, or should we just?
No, it's fine. There'll be a AI voiceover telling you how you're wrong.
But there are some interesting applications that are being pioneered here in Canada. A lot of them have to do with getting medical supplies to hard to reach areas. And so in this one, this was put out actually by Transport Canada. This was a Transport Canada one, but they're talking about delivering supplies to indigenous communities, particularly in the prairies. I think it's
That's our matrice.
that's your matrice.
That's our matrice. That's the one they stole. They stole it.
Transport Canada stole our
Transport
matrice?
Canada stole it. No. We still got to get a milk crate for that thing.
R.I.P. the matrice.
Yeah, no, that's a Matrice 600. Yeah, so they're obviously showing some footage of different prototype platforms. So
And they're gonna, in this video, they strap a bunch of medical supplies to it, and they take it.
that's an AED, which is a great idea because you can quickly deliver a defibrillator to someone in an event of a heart attack or something. So
Exactly. And then that's a Drone Delivery Canada. That's one of their prototype aircraft, and soon, and they're trying to get to the Montana First Nation, which is outside of Edmonton.
yeah,
They're
just
trying
southeast, like
yeah.
Leduc area.
trying to get medical supplies out there, and also this was the big one that they did was Halton Healthcare, which is Oakville area, like the Oakville area, and there's like a 13-kilometer track, and what they were trying to do is there's a couple of research facilities in the Halton area, and they could send samples or organs between these hospitals.
Right. Yeah, the big thing with this is, so this one in particular has been talked about a few times, I think. It's a first off, it's 13 kilometers. On a good day, like the middle of the night, it might take 20 minutes to drive. Typically, I think it was like 45 minutes with traffic. And so an ambulance or whatever they're using could get stuck in traffic and speed. And they were using it either to do samples for testing, because maybe the sample's taken at one hospital and tested at the other, or supplies. But the other one was nuclear medical isotopes. So either for treatment or for testing, this stuff.
It has a bit of a shelf life.
It does. It's limited. And of course, also it's highly valuable and highly risky. So that was one of the high values, to be able to get it there in like 13 kilometers at I don't know what the average drone is doing, about 36 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour in like a stable cruise, but can go much faster, right? There's not really a speed limit on this. So even if it's doing an average of 40 kilometers an hour, they're increasing and doubling their speed over what's happening on the road.
Want me to grab my E6B?
No. No, I do not. Stop it. But okay, like your average drone can do 70 to 80 kilometers an hour and not be a big deal, right? I'm trying to be realistic. Like, yes, there are FPV drones that can do easily 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, but you're not getting a 5-inch FPV drone to carry nuclear medical isotopes. We should
Please
have asked Ignacio about that.
do not get any ideas out there, audience.
Yeah, we should have asked Ignacio. Can you put a spleen on your FPV drone?
Yeah. Well, and so there have been organ transfers done. There was one successfully done in, is it Chicago or Toronto? Sorry, I haven't had enough energy drink this morning yet, but it was a line of sight, rooftop to rooftop type delivery. It was only 3 or 4 kilometers, but they were able to successfully take a human heart, I think it was, from the one to the other. And like, that's a big deal. Because, yeah, you could do the delivery with any kind of organ, but the fact that they put a human heart in it that has a life value, they trusted the system enough to make it from here to there, like, and not risk it.
Yeah, there's an aesthetic value to it being a heart over something else.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure it was tested 100 plus times, empty payload, nothing else. But the fact that they finally pulled the trigger and said, yes, this human's life is going inside that drone to make it there so that they can have another lease on life with a new heart. So that's more like, all the regulation side of it aside, the fact that you trusted a life to that. So that means more to me than it does like someone getting into a drone, right? Like that's a different thing to me. So
there are some challenges to drone delivery just from a regulatory standpoint. And a technical standpoint. And I think that this is probably where the drone delivery industry has not accelerated in Canada to the kind of what people thought it was going to be maybe 5 years ago.
Right.
So one of the biggest things is it's a beyond visual line of sight operation.
That's probably the biggest limitation.
And we've talked about this in the past in some other videos about the challenges of beyond visual line of sight operations, but the amount of paperwork that is required,
Yeah.
and the amount of technical capabilities of an aircraft to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight are higher than standard consumer level drones. They need to be able to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's no and. It's the regulatory and the technical requirements of the aircraft. So
Well, be realistic. So there's a huge cost, right? So, and I think this is there's good examples of this in the realities of, like, I think Drone Delivery Canada is about 10 years old, for example, and like the path to revenue for a company like that is solving all the hard engineering technical challenges and the regulatory challenges long before they can go to a customer and say, yeah, we've solved that. Right?
Yeah.
So there's this massive headwind for a company to get into this space right now, just like videography probably 15 years ago, right? I think drone videography is solved, right? There's
the Mini 4 Pro.
yeah,
Drone videography is solved.
it's a solved problem. So the delivery, well, they had to build their own hardware. They had to build their own base stations. They had to build their own control systems. They had to build their own SOPs, procedures, checklists. And then they had to go to the regulator and say, hey, we want to do this. We've got this 50, 100, 150 pound flying object that we want to send 5 kilometers over the horizon. And we're relying on radio links, satellite that has a quarter second or more latency, maybe cellular on Canada's best cellular network, like in remote Canada with barely LTE connectivity.
So yeah, let's just talk about the technical challenges. So the Flycart. Let's take the Flycart 30 for example.
Well, that's where I'm going, right?
Yeah,
like
this is a consumer level, ostensibly a consumer level aircraft. It could not do what it for a drone delivery application in Canada.
Yeah.
It would be an insufficient aircraft.
But why? So I'm going to counter you on this, but go ahead. Just be prepared.
Okay. I think it would be an insufficient aircraft because the distance challenges in Canada would make an aircraft like that not rely or because it's so the Flycart 30 from a technical standpoint is based on the Agris. It's got
the T40 T50 platform.
The Agris T40 T50 platform. The battery life on that would not be sufficient to do meaningful deliveries in Canada.
I'm pulling up the specs as we talk.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. I want to know the battery life because I believe it is not.
Okay.
I believe it to be insufficient.
First off, let's talk about what it can do weight wise, right? Since we're kind of we're off the rails. Let's go. 65 kilograms is the weight of the aircraft empty. Maximum weight is 95 kilograms. So what's that?
That's 30 kilograms.
Yeah, 30 kilograms of payload, so 66-ish pounds, right?
That's fine. I think that's a sufficient payload capacity. For me, it's the battery life on that.
And of course, you can go to 30. What's 42? 95 minus 42. Oh my goodness, I'm tired. Anyway, you can take one battery out and do more for shorter hops. Endurance, dual batteries, 29 minutes. Cruise speed, where's cruise speed? Max horizontal speed, 20 meters per second. So 10 is 36. So let's call it 64 kilometers an hour at 20 minutes, 29 minutes. So let's take away 9 for safety, right? So let's say 20 minutes at 60 kilometers an hour. That's 40 kilometers. No, 30 is half. So
sure you don't want me to grab the E6B?
Shh. You talk while I calculate.
Anyway, so we're talking here about a half hour battery life, give or take. To me that's not sufficient fuel for
24 kilometers range.
And that's 24 kilometers
Line
range.
of sight, perfect conditions.
Line of sight, perfect conditions. One way, there needs to be a dock at the other side.
Yeah, and that's not factoring for the hover, takeoff, ascent, descent.
So for me, 20 kilometers range, I don't know.
That's a pretty okay. Hold on, 20 kilometers is a long. Like in an urban center, 20 kilometers is a lot.
Yeah, but that's in an urban center. We're not the whole point of drone delivery in Canada is not for our urban centers. It's for the other places.
I disagree. I think that's exactly where it needs to start because this is the problem. Like, okay, it's 12 minutes to the hangar.
Mhm.
Someone like let's say someone prints a check or something, right? And someone comes to go get that check, or there's a document, something paper, something lightweight, right? Oh, I forgot my hard drive. I need something from the main building. That is 45 minutes realistically of my time to drive from here to there, back again. It's line of sight from here to the hangar, for example. We're talking about from the Westland building where we are right now to the Pitt Meadows Airport. This is a company that's spread across different locations. Document sending back and forth, right? It happens. That's 45 minutes for that trip. That trip is probably, what is it? It's just over 5 nautical miles, I think, from the airport to here.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, line of sight straight across with airspace considerations and everything else. Absolutely, there's value in that, right? That's urban center. We're talking about employees or people having real hourly costs, not driving vehicles, exposure to accidents, right? That driving in the Lower Mainland is probably one of the most dangerous places in Canada to drive. It's insane how bad it is here. So there's tangible benefit beyond just speed. There's safety, and we're just talking about something simple. So that, like for me, urban centers absolutely is where drone delivery needs to get done quickly.
Well, it's the first step of the industry, but I think that the value is the use cases that we are looking at. All of these are in rural areas. We're talking about rural Southern Ontario, rural prairies.
Yeah.
The distances here are much higher, and I just like a 20 kilometer range. Like,
And that's where I hear it all the time, and you hear it too, of course. But crawl, walk, run, right? So I think some people argue that the run is the urban center. I think it's the other way around because we're talking about there's beyond line of sight initiatives in Canada that are massive. So, for example, there's an initiative for running pipeline patrols between Edmonton and Fort McMurray. That's it's a 5-hour drive, right? So it's a long distance
on Highway 63, like the most treacherous stretch of road in the entire country.
Exactly. But they're doing beyond line of sight operations patrolling. And of course, that'll eventually be a delivery corridor as well. I need a special tool. It's under 100 pounds. No problem. Put it in a fixed wing drone that has a gas powered engine or something that's got insane range. And now your limitations are command and control and regulations.
So let's just lay bare here the technical, because we're kind of, we haven't specifically said what the technical limitations are. They've been on screen, so people will have an idea. But
Ian's just ignoring the screen this morning.
but video and control reception.
Yeah.
And detect and avoid.
Yeah. Command and control and DAA.
Yeah. So from a regulatory standpoint, the reason why these things are important is because a delivery drone, and remember, we could be talking about a drone that weighs 150 kilograms.
Yep.
Total with the whole package.
300 pounds.
That will be sharing the same airspace as helicopters and airplanes, potentially at same or similar altitudes.
Yeah.
More so for helicopters than probably aircraft, because
especially in remote areas.
So we brought up the Fort McMurray comparison.
I've cruised along there at 500 to 700 feet.
Yeah, 500 to 700 feet in a helicopter in that, like, just for people at home who may not know like what normal cruising altitudes for aircraft are, it is very, very common for a helicopter to be at less than 1,000 feet.
Especially in low weather.
Above the ground.
And in isolated areas.
Yes. For fixed wing aircraft, for us, it's at least 1,500 feet AGL normally to cruise. So it's a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But still, like, if you saw an aircraft at a low level, especially in a remote area, it's not uncommon. That's not going to be uncommon.
No. There's a corridor between Fort McMurray and, the lake. Starts with a C.
Cold Lake.
No, it's north. It's basically right at the border.
I just read Ducks by Kate Beaton, the graphic novel about working in the oil sands. So I feel like I should remember this, but
Oh man, I've been there a bunch of times.
It's a good graphic novel. Recommend.
Anyway, so you follow the power lines 1,000 feet either way, and caravans are going back and forth at about 1,000 feet as well. So you're kind of all in the same airspace.
Yeah,
So,
and also like Twin Otters and Dash 8s and
Fort Chippewa.
yeah. So you're going to be sharing the same airspace. So there needs to be a way for you to, if there is first detect a conflict before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be sufficient lighting on the aircraft, and you need to be able to listen to the radio frequency
Yeah.
and have a radio frequency relay. And these radio frequencies are line of sight
Yeah.
traditionally.
So you're saying the drone has to monitor the local radio frequency of the air it's in.
Yeah, so
and you have to be able to hear it back.
exactly.
At the
So
command
the
control
person,
center.
if the person at the base station is flying,
Yeah.
they need to be able to hear 126.7, which is the uncontrolled airspace frequency.
Yeah.
So whether that it goes to the drone like that and then is relayed by Wi-Fi to the base station, or there's some sort of relay to actually relay the radio signal,
Yeah.
that drone pilot then needs to be able to communicate on the frequency.
Yeah. Again, relay. So you have like a packet connection between the base station and the drone, and then a radio back.
So it needs to be able to detect a conflict before it happens, and then if there is a conflict, avoid that conflict. And we're talking about a closing speed of 200 to 300 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, depending on what's going on.
So it needs to be
Quickly.
like within 1 second. You need to be able to take
Yeah.
evasive action.
So there is software out there, because like in the fixed wing world, you've got TCAS, and there'll be a resolution advisory or something like an RA where it'll say descend now or climb now. It'll do one or the other because the software talks to you opposing airplanes.
But most general aviation aircraft don't have TCAS on them.
No, they don't.
So
And that's
are we gonna mandate that every fixed wing aircraft and helicopter now get some sort of drone avoidance?
Well, this is the
Equipment?
hot debate. This is the meat of the issue for what we're talking about here, because detect and avoid is the hardest and the not really solved problem. There's companies like Iris Automation have either base station visual systems, and then I also believe they have a drone mounted system that uses onboard video sensors and AI and everything else, and then radar too. But because in Canada, and this is where we're lagging, and this crosses over into my helicopter world as well, that we have got to get our poop together on getting digital conspicuity into all aircraft in Canada.
It's
One way or
VFR.
another.
Look outside.
Yeah, it is, but it is also there. You look at the density of traffic that there is in the Lower Mainland. Again, you've got the training areas. You've got the Glen Valley International. You've got Pitt Lake training area. Thousands of movements a month, probably, if not week. There's dozens of flight schools that all go to the same airspace. There is no requirement for digital conspicuity in uncontrolled airspace in Canada.
No.
Right? So you have a mode C transponder in uncontrolled airspace, not required. In some airspace, it is required, but not everywhere.
But it doesn't even matter if you had a mode C, because aircraft don't have equipment on board to detect other transponders.
And that's the thing. Mode C transponder, that box that goes into your dash that you put the code into, that is 60-year-old technology, 80-year-old technology. It is old. Like, what's a KT-76 Bendix King radio? Like, it's probably made in 76.
Yeah, and they're also very expensive.
Yes. And then, so now Mode S, or ADS-B, which is Advanced Digital Surveillance Broadcast, there's different versions. And in Canada right now, they're pushing towards what's called a diversity system, which is a radio antenna transmitting down to the ground, and then one transmitting up to satellite. In the States, it's not required. You can have just a single system which goes to ground base, because there's ground base receivers everywhere, and those the ground base system still works aircraft to aircraft. DJI, in the late teens, I think it was like 18 or 19, they announced they would start putting ADS-B receivers in all their drones. Mavic Air 2, I think, was the first that really came with it. It worked. I had it. It worked well. But then it started to not work. And of course, again, in Canada, not required. So it only kind of worked. Mavic 3 had it. I don't know if it's still there or what's happened. Like, I've not gotten an ADS-B alert in forever.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is where we are. but also this discussion's come up in Calgary, for example, like watching a Dash 8 come in controlled airspace. Absolutely, they have ADSB because they're required to at high altitudes, but it's not going off either. And it's not like the pilots are turning off their transponders on short final.
No. So the issue that we're talking about, I'll just kind of talk about the regulations to people who might not know. So in aviation, there are two types of flight: VFR flight and IFR flight.
Yes.
We are discussing VFR flight. The fundamental principle of VFR flight is that you as the pilot need to be able to see everything: clouds, terrain, traffic.
Yeah.
The fundamental, the core of VFR laws are all based around the pilot being able to see and avoid conflict.
Yes.
So what Ian, the reason why Ian and I are disagreeing on this is because what Ian is proposing is that we fundamentally change the entire structure of VFR flight in Canada.
I'm not saying we change it. See and avoid is fundamentally important. But what I'm saying is
you're asking pilots to rely on equipment to detect and avoid.
The problem right now is we've created this false sense of security because there are aircraft that have it and there are aircraft that do not. And it's the same mindset as in the helicopter world, they call it children of the magenta, right? So pilots that learn using electronic tools and only know how to rely on a GPS for navigation and genuinely suck at dead reckoning.
We call it iPad pilots in fixed
iPad
wing.
pilots. Okay. So yeah, same idea. Because what happened was the reason it's children of the magenta is 20 years ago, ForeFlight didn't exist, but the Garmin GPS map 496 or whatever had a magenta line that you would follow.
Yes.
For your track.
It's the same on Garmin. It's still a pink line.
Yeah, exactly. It's magenta. It's not pink. It's magenta.
It's pink.
And so yeah, you lose map skills. Now we've got aircraft like that have Garmin 345 transponders that also do Bluetooth back into the iPad and will show you on the iPad where other aircraft are. You have Lynx Avionics has a transponder that has a top-down TCAS view. The aircraft I fly have these things. They're awesome tools, but they are 50% effective at best because if you hear a traffic call, now you're looking outside, you're looking inside, you're looking outside, or you might see one but not see the other aircraft that's in trail because it doesn't have a transponder that also broadcasts. So you've got this broken system where half or less of your traffic have these tools, and then you're getting potentially alerts that are pulling you back inside the cockpit instead of out.
See, I don't think it's I think what is broken the system is that people aren't looking outside enough.
Fair.
If you the only thing you can do ever is look outside, and you see a traffic. If it's getting bigger, take action immediately. If it's going left or right on your windshield, if it's just getting bigger.
Yeah. So my challenge is there are a lot of cockpit distractions, and especially in the lower mainland. Now, bringing this back into drone space, cockpit distractions, TCAS, all this stuff. A drone is the size of a bird or smaller, and it doesn't fly like a bird.
No.
Birds have flapping wings. They have visual things that happen to them. Like you'll see, like
they vary in
bright,
altitude
dark,
and speed.
Yeah, and there's enough movement against the backdrop that you have a better chance of seeing a bird.
Also, you only expect a bird on takeoff and landing, so you're looking for a bird on takeoff and landing.
Yeah, or I like for me, it's I know where to expect them.
Right.
So riparian areas, water areas.
Oh yeah, for you would be more.
Yeah.
You'd have more bird contact, but we're flying high enough that we're only expecting birds on takeoff
a drone,
and landing.
drones would be anywhere and everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
So the thing I'm envisioning. So during my CPL training, I went on a cross country flight to Williams Lake.
Yeah.
And the route for Williams Lake is you basically fly up the Fraser River all the way to Williams Lake. It's kind of a narrow canyon. And the heights of the mountains are at around 5,000 feet to 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
Which means that me as a fixed wing pilot and as a helicopter pilot, because you're in the terrain and you want to be as high as possible in the terrain, there's a very narrow band where you're going to be above the terrain and below the altitude requirement where you need supplemental oxygen for a non-pressurized cabin.
Right.
So there's maybe a 3,000 foot gap. you add drones into this because, well, I guess maybe you wouldn't because drones could potentially fly at a higher altitude. But if they're going to share the same narrow VFR corridors,
Yeah.
because if they were above 10,000 feet, they would be then conflicting with IFR traffic.
Yes.
But if you were sharing the same narrow corridors with this, is there going to be conflict? Maybe less so in the prairies because there's more places to fly, but in the mountains here, where if you want to go between cities in BC, you have to fly basically over the canyons if you don't have supplemental oxygen, which a lot of aircraft don't. Over 10,000 feet, you need to bring an oxygen bottle and have it with you for the flight, unless you're flying illegally.
Okay.
But so this is my thought. This is my scenario that I can picture in my mind of there being conflict in a place where there's only maybe 2 nautical miles left or right and 3,000 feet up and down.
Okay, so a construction point and also dealing with high density altitude potentially. So limited performance in a light aircraft. Yeah. Well, and so there are VFR corridors all over, and if you're in a low weather situation, I like that side, it would just never be approved for the drone to go into that, right?
Right.
Like, could you imagine a VFR corridor? Because the other advantage of a drone is it doesn't need to fly VFR.
No,
Like
it
once you're
can-
beyond line of sight, the only concern you're going to have, it can fly through a cloud as long as the cloud doesn't have icing conditions.
Yes.
So because it doesn't, as long as it's below an IFR corridor, it could probably fly IMC in a VFR environment because it's digitally controlled.
Or if now we're starting to talk about putting de-icing equipment onto a drone.
What? Yeah, that'll happen,
Yeah.
right? Heated blades won't be a big deal because it'd just be electrically heated.
Yeah, that's right.
It's conductive or inductive, something like that. So, yeah, beyond line of sight, like the radio link, the command and control stuff is coming quick. Like Starlink, low latency Starlink is going to be a game changer for sure. Where you've got low altitude flying satellites that you're going to get like sub 100 millisecond latency and high bandwidth.
I don't trust Elon Musk.
Okay, fair. That's your personal opinion. That's that's my standard boilerplate disclaimer with all of our discussions.
Mhm.
But the reality of it is like we're gonna have a high speed, low latency satellite network, whether it's Starlink or some other
The technology is there.
yeah, exactly. It's been problem solved. Now it's just who has the money to do it. And you'll get real time video. Look at Starship, right? All the flight tests that are happening on the Starship thing. You're in the Indian Ocean and you get real time video as this thing's going through the upper ionosphere, right? Whereas we used to have complete total blackout in the Apollo program, right? They watch Apollo 13. They stretch it for drama, but you have no link and no communication or telemetry from the capsule as it goes through reentry. So that's not a problem. DAA, ADS-B in every aircraft, right? On the traditional crewed aircraft side. On the drone side, no, I don't want ADS-B because that means there's going to be 100,000 returns on my TCAS from drones flying around below me that may or may not be part of a commercial operation, because if it's one, it's got to be all.
Mhm.
So we need a different frequency for drone DAA that's not standard ADS-B, but has a tool system in it that can identify a potential conflict with crewed. So that means that every airplane's going to need a new transponder or TCAS system, because you're going to need system that says, hey, there's an airplane in front of you, but also down there's a drone, and I'm ignoring it until it gets within 500 feet of you.
Right.
Some sort of filtering.
Right.
So
So the issue with that is you're proposing that each new aircraft gets $10,000 to $15,000 of new equipment.
add a zero. Easily.
$100,000 of new equipment.
Oh,
so-
yeah. Yeah. Like between labor costs and everything else, like it's insane. Like a transponder is $10,000, but then you need the antennas, and you need the labor, then you need the downtime. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. So what else have we got?
I think we've outlined the challenges here. So I guess to summarize the challenges is that we're taking a new technology and trying to graft it onto an existing regulatory and an existing regulatory system
Yeah.
that was not designed to have this.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some pain points because whether the goal of detect and avoid is safety, of course.
Yeah.
And the regulators are not going to compromise safety for new toys.
Well, and yeah, there have been a lot of challenges, and the reality of it is we're still in the crawl space, right? We're still crawling. We're still taking small steps, and there's been lots of wins, but they usually involve a visual line of sight component. And let's address the fact that like the notice of proposed amendment came out in 2020 to amend the Canadian drone laws. That was 2 to 3 years time frame was probably the plan.
And now we're looking late 2025.
Yeah, April 2025 was supposed to be coming into force. It has been moved back to fall
September, October, November.
Fall 2025. And there was reasons like the What We Heard report basically outlined the fact that, well, tens of thousands of Canadians basically said they didn't like something or had comment or, well, what about this or what about that? So the committee, the design by committee aspect of the regulations ballooned out of control, and they realized that they had to change some things. So what was going to happen in April is now fall, and so everything's getting delayed, and now I really do hope that we see concrete steps forward by fall 2025, because companies like Drone Delivery are waiting for this, right?
Yeah. The new level, so the new level 1 complex certificate, which is it will be the new highest level of drone certificate in Canada.
Basically the third stage.
Yes. It will make even just testing these aircraft easier, because they won't need to get an SFOC to test every single aircraft.
Yeah, if it's an unloaded below a certain weight in a certain environment, you'll have established areas that, yeah, this is a normal operation now. It's routine.
Yeah, exactly. Which will accelerate the ability to test and these
well, and it reduces the workload. Like, transport is limited staff.
Yes.
Right. There's opportunities there if you want to get into the regulatory space for career development, but they need good people, more good people. They have good people there, but so you look at like how much of an effort it is to get a complex SFOC done. That's why it's a minimum of 30 business days.
And you're sending them a stack of paper this thick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're sending them hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of procedures.
Yeah, yeah.
So
for beyond line of sight, especially.
Yeah. So we set out today to ask the question, what's up with drone delivery?
Yeah.
And I think we have more than answered this question.
Killed the room and brought the mood.
Oh, I don't think we've killed the room. I could talk about regulations all day, as Ian knows.
Yeah. We've been talking about moving pizza. Well, we started moving people. It moves into the advanced air mobility, and there's same aspect. I, for one, could really appreciate the ability to use a drone to fly to work instead of driving. For example, yesterday I had to make 1.5 trips back and forth, and it was 4.5 hours in the car of driving. So that's ridiculous, and that would be 18 minutes each way. So advanced air mobility is looking at urban sprawl, and it's going to cause more urban sprawl, of course, because now you've got the ability to fly everywhere. But there's command and control. Same. It's basically you're scaling everything that we're doing right now at the drone delivery side, but now you're delivering people. So the level of redundancy is tenfold of what it is now.
And probably the level of pilot training is going to have to increase.
I don't know about that, because I don't think that urban air mobility is going to be able to afford a pilot in the aircraft for quite some time.
I'm not talking about a pilot in the aircraft, but there needs to be someone monitoring.
Okay, so remote piloting.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm talking about pilot training just for emergencies.
Oh, there's no question that the urban air mobility systems will be operated by a licensed commercial pilot of some sort, either fixed wing or rotary, or an entirely new type.
Yeah, I would probably think an entirely new type. It's a different aircraft that you're flying.
Yeah, it's kind of like you look at tilt wings. Like Augusta's got the 609 tilt rotor, and then there's the Osprey, the V22. They're not quite airplanes, not quite helicopters. They have different. You can change configuration in flight. So I'm not sure.
I mean,
which-
the Osprey is not quite an aircraft. That's 2 jokes about the Osprey in one episode.
We're gonna do another bird episode.
All right. If you are in the Langley area, Ian and I will be fist fighting in the parking lot after this episode to settle our differences.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment if we've said anything that you think is either smart or the opposite of smart.
Absolutely comment. Yeah.
Absolutely leave a comment.
Fact check us, of course. We'll try and do our best as always. But this is something that. Why do you think this isn't happening fast enough? Is it happening fast enough? Are we on track? Is this what we expected? I think that I'm a very impatient person for one thing. When new technology is launched, I want it now, right? But there's challenges to it. So, what do you think about ADS-B? What do you think about digital conspicuity? I want to do a full episode on it at some point, even if
We've already
it's-
done a full episode
Yeah,
on it.
okay, fine. I hijacked this one pretty much. So
No, we did another one earlier in the year when remote ID came in the States about digital conspicuity.
yes, we can check that one.
Yeah.
Check that one in.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Like, subscribe, leave a comment.
thank you very much for watching.
Mhm.
This is really awkward today for some reason. I'm over here. Thank you very much.
This has been another episode of the Coastal Drone Podcast. I've been Ian. I've been Finn. I'm here with Ian. Cam's at the board.
Our content quality is at 11 out of 10 today.
Thank you very much for watching, and we hope to see you again on the next episode.